What's going on, everybody? It is draft time. Let's break down my final top 60 big board as well as storylines for every first round pick in this draft. If you haven't been paying attention to college basketball or international basketball or prospects that are in this upcoming draft class, but you want to know what's going on draft night, this is the perfect video for you. Because in an hour, you will know at least a little bit about most prospects that will get drafted in this year's draft. And you'll know all the storylines and craziness that will go into this year's first round. As this draft has no consensus number one overall pick, this class has top prospects refusing to work out for top teams. And while people have called this a weaker draft class, I think it is filled with unique role players that could be parts of winning teams down the line. We're going to start with my big board, going from player number 60 to player number 1, and then we'll look at picks from 1 all the way up to 30. If you don't care about second round graded prospects, I have timestamps below so you can skip ahead. But like I said, this video is designed for you to know everything about the draft, and it's always fun to pick out prospects that you like and you want your favorite team to draft. Of course, most of you are Blazer fans, this is a Blazer channel, but this is designed for any NBA fan or basketball fan out there. Now, a lot of work went into this video, so if you leave a like, I would greatly appreciate it. It would help spread the video, and you can share it with any friends of yours that need to be brought up to speed regarding the NBA draft. Also, hit that subscribe button. We will have a full draft live stream on Wednesday and Thursday for both the first and second rounds, and the graphical production behind that is going to be top notch. I'm very excited for that. Now, big board time. Let's jump into it. These are some fringe draftable players. Most of them will be undrafted free agents. And this video is already long enough, so I'm not going to go into depth on these guys, but these are just some names to watch out for some undrafted free agent signings and some late second round picks. Quinten Post is a Dutch big man who played for the Boston College Eagles the past 3 seasons. He was a 5-year college player starting his career at Mississippi State, and he developed into one of the more skilled big men at the college level. He has legitimate size, measuring in at 7 feet tall without shoes, with a 7'2.5" wingspan and a 9'4" standing reach, but he can also shoot the ball and he can pass, which makes him an intriguing prospect at the back end of the second round. He shot 43% from 3 his last 2 years in college, and also averaged 3 assists per game during his final season. He had a lot of plays where he'd put the ball on the ground and have slow, methodical drives using his size in order to get to the rim. He has good touch on hook shots. He's just a very skilled player. However, there's some serious question marks about how his game translates to the NBA level, as he doesn't have great foot speed and might be somebody who gets picked apart in pick and roll. He's also 24 years old, making him one of the oldest prospects in this class. But if he can find a way to not be terrible defensively, his offensive game gives him a chance. Judah Mitson is one of the most intriguing players in this year's draft. He's very shifty with the ball and creative off the dribble, but kind of has the feel of one of those guys who lights up the G League scoring the ball, but can never make it fully translate to the NBA because he's not the biggest. He's athletic, but not necessarily elite there. And then his jump shot is a true problem. He played 2 years at the University of Syracuse and shot 30 and 28% from 3 respectively. So defenders are going to be able to give him a gap and be able to contain his drives. He's going to struggle playing off the ball if he can't knock down threes. His shot is a little quirky mechanically, and while he can pass, handle, and get to the rim, it's just tough seeing what his role is going to be at the next level. Enrique Freeman is a 5-year college player out of the University of Akron, and he is the defending MAC Player of the Year, leading his team to an NCAA tournament berth. He was a 4-time MAC All-Defense player, and after an impressive showing at the Portsmouth Invitational and the NBA Draft Combine, there's some buzz around his name right now. There was even a rumor that he might rise all the way into the first round. I don't see that happening, but I would be shocked if he's not drafted in the second. He's a power forward coming in at 6'7" without shoes, with a 7'2" wingspan and a 9' standing reach, which gives him pretty good size for that position, and averaged over 18 points per game and a whopping 13 rebounds per game last season. He projects as somebody who might be able to be a 3-and-D player at the next level while providing some serious value on the glass. During his first 4 years of college, he only made 1 3-point shot. However, last year he was 20 for 54, shooting 37%, albeit still on small volume. If that 3-point shot can truly be legitimate at the next level, then he could be a steal as a 3-and-D role guy who rebounds. LeBron James Jr., better known as Bronny, in case you didn't know already and didn't figure it out by his name, he is the son of LeBron. But he's trying to forge his own path into the NBA, And his story is an interesting one. Being the son of a top 2 player of all time means that Bronny has dealt with attention pretty much his whole life, with a ton of attention coming when he was a freshman in high school, but he grew into a McDonald's All-American player at Sierra Canyon and then committed to USC. Unfortunately, he suffered a cardiac arrest incident, which robbed him of a very important ramp up to the college level that a lot of freshmen need, and he missed the start of his season. Luckily, he was medically cleared, was able to play, although was not that productive. He averaged 5 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, shooting 36% from the field and 27% from 3. He also didn't measure the best at the draft combine, 6'1.5" without shoes, a 6'7" wingspan is pretty decent for that height, and 8'2.5" standing reach. So he's a point guard sized player, but has questionable point guard skills. He has worked out for 2 teams, the Los Angeles Lakers and Phoenix Suns. The Suns only have the 22nd pick. There have been rumors about teams trying to draft Bronny James with the hope that LeBron wants to play with his son and will come sign with that team. LeBron's agent, Rich Paul, has shut that down. But we can't know for sure if that's Rich Paul trying to get Bronny to fall to the Lakers at 55. But I also think that Bronny has enough value to get drafted in this year's NBA draft. While he was not productive as a college player, he projects as a really impactful guard defender at the next level. And I truly think he's a better shooter than his college percentages indicate. He has good form, he has a consistent base, and he's also a decent athlete, so he might be a guy that's able to stick on an NBA team as a 3-and-D undersized guard who can hopefully guard both guard positions. It's just a weird role because he's point guard sized and doesn't have the best ball handling ability, is not shifty enough with his dribble, doesn't create space, and while he can rise up and throw one down in the open court, he's just not explosive in traffic and has some weirdness to his game. If he wasn't LeBron's son, he probably would have went back to college, but assuming he's still on the board once the second round comes along, he's who everyone's going to talk about. Tristan Newton led UConn to back-to-back national championships, won NCAA tournament MVP, and this is after he transferred from East Carolina. He actually spent the first 3 years of his college career at East Carolina. He's one of the older prospects in this year's draft class, being 23 years old already, but he provides a winning pedigree for a team at a guard spot. Measured in at 6'3" with a 6'7" wingspan, 8'4" standing reach. And he's a crafty driver, a crafty finisher, passes the ball well, averaged over 6 assists per game last season, on top of his 15 points. The biggest thing for him at the next level is going to be being able to knock down threes. He shot 32% last year and was at 32.7% for his college career. Because he can certainly pass the ball, he has okay size for a point guard, he's crafty enough, but if he can't get guys to fully commit to him at the 3-point line, I think he's going to have a hard time driving past people and creating advantages for himself. But in the mid to late second round, it'd be tough to pass up on a guard like this with this sort of pedigree. Jalen Wells is an interesting player. He was a key part of Washington State's rise back to the NCAA tournament for the first time in a decade and a half. He was a 3-year college player, but only played 1 year at the D1 level, as his first 2 seasons he spent at Sonoma State. But at Washington, he was a knockdown 3-point shooter, shooting 42% from 3 on 5 attempts per game. And at the next level, he projects as a 3-point shooting, floor spacing small forward. He measured 6'6.5" without shoes, with a 6'7" wingspan, with an 8'7.5" standing reach. Those are good measurements for a small forward, and he's a little bit younger than some of the other prospects in his range, as he doesn't turn 21 until August. Teams love shooting, and given that he's younger than a lot of players that will get drafted around him, you can see him rise up into the early second round. It's questionable whether he'll ever be able to create at the next level. He's not the quickest guy, he's not the shiftiest ball handler, and he does need to get stronger in order to handle his own defensively at the small forward position, but he provides a skill that teams love. It'll be interesting to see where he goes. Oso Ighodaro is a 4-year player that played at Marquette, a team that saw some serious success the past couple years due to him and Tyler Kolek. Ighodaro is an undersized big man, as he measured 6'9.5" without shoes, with a 6'11" wingspan and a little over an 8'8" standing reach. He moves decently well, but he is not a 3-point shooting threat, which means he's probably going to have to play the center position in the league, and that's where the question marks start to come in. He was a bench player his first 2 years in college, but broke out the past couple of seasons. In his senior year, he averaged 13 points per game, 7 rebounds, and 3 assists. He has a really nice floater, but never made a 3 during his time in college. He was 0 for 2. He's also a 60-ish% free throw shooter. And while his basketball IQ is extremely impressive, he had an interview recently where he was breaking down NBA actions, and I was very impressed by that. He's probably going to have to develop that jump shot in order to have a real role at the next level, and there is a lot of work to do there. KJ Simpson is a point guard at the University of Colorado. He played 3 years there, and in his final year, he was an absolute star, averaging 20 points per game, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists, while shooting 47% from the field and 43% from 3. That was a major bump in three-point shooting, as his first 2 seasons he shot under 28%, and that's why he is now draftable. Because ultimately his value lies in his offensive game, as he's undersized, he's 6 feet tall, 6'4.5" wingspan, 7'9.5" standing reach. He can be feisty defensively and competitive, so he might not be horrible, but he's more likely going to be below average. But what he can do is make the right play, drive the lane, finish around shot blockers, and if last year's shooting is to be believed, then he can knock down threes as well. I think he has a decent chance of becoming a backup point guard off the bench for a decent team, but I don't expect much more than that. Oh, Justin Edwards. He was a top high school recruit that was looked at as a top 5 prospect for this draft before his college season. He has now slipped to a consensus second round grade. His shot creation didn't translate from high school to the college level, and his athleticism didn't either. He looked like a top-notch athlete before arriving at Kentucky, and then it seems like he lost some explosiveness and burst. And I don't know why that is, but he also tested very poorly athletically at the NBA Draft Combine as well. He was relegated to mostly just a mid-range and three-point shooter. He started the year terribly from 3, but really picked up steam the second half of the year. He shot 36.5% from there. And he had some really impressive stretches where he took over games just with his jump shooting ability. But he is a far cry from the prospect that people thought he was. He measured 6'6" without shoes, 6'10" wingspan, 8'6.5" standing reach. He has small forward size. But man, last year was disappointing. We've been talking about Harrison Ingram in draft circles for the past 3 years, as he was a 5-star recruit that committed to the University of Stanford, and a lot of people thought would be a one-and-done player. However, he spent 3 years in college, first 2 at Stanford. In his final year, he transferred to North Carolina, where he had a little bit of a different role. His numbers were pretty similar his first 2 years in college at Stanford, averaging 10.5 points per game, 3 and 3.7 assists respectively, and 31 to 32% from 3. He was a bit more of a point forward that wasn't the best floor spacer or shooter. However, when he transferred to North Carolina, his assists went down to 2.2, but his shooting went up to 38.5%. And he's an intriguing prospect because he knows how to play. He had some takeover ability in college. And while he's not going to wow you in any one area, he just finds ways to get buckets and make things happen. His three-point shooting improvement last year was very crucial for him. And if you can tap into a little bit of that playmaking that he showed at Stanford, you could have an intriguing player. I don't know what to think about Bobby Klintman. There was a lot of hype around him during last year's draft cycle after his freshman year at Wake Forest, where he really did nothing at all. Wake Forest wasn't any good in 2023, and he didn't even start for them. He averaged 5 points and 4.5 rebounds, and all his percentages were on low volume. But for some reason, people thought he might be able to rise into the first round. Instead, he elected to go to the NBL and played for Cairns in Australia. Klintman's numbers were more impressive. He averaged 21 minutes a game with 10 points, 5 rebounds, shooting 34% from 3 and 43% from the field. The Swedish power forward measured in at 6'9" with a 6'11" wingspan, 8'10.5" standing reach. He can move decently. He has potential as a shooter, but could be a slightly below average guy there. Defensively, he has some work to do. And while he can put the ball on the floor, I don't know if he's going to be able to turn the corner at the next level. If he goes to a team that knows how to really develop players, then he might be something. Kevin McCullough was a 5-year college player, spending his first 3 seasons at Texas Tech before his final 2 at Kansas. He was one of the best players in college basketball last season, before an injury cost him the opportunity to play in the Big 12 and NCAA tournaments. He's a defensive player who can pass the ball. Last year averaged 18 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, while shooting 45% from the field and 33% from 3. The knock on him throughout his career has been he can't shoot the 3-point ball. And then last season, it seemed like he figured it out before his percentage trailed off. He finished at 33%, which was a career high for any season. His shooting form is weird, and while he can knock down shots from the mid-range, there's just questions about how he functions off of better players at the next level. He'll be able to defend, he'll be able to make the right play, but is that enough if he's not a floor spacer and defenses can ignore him? Measurements: he's 6'5", 6'9" wingspan, 8'7" standing reach. He's a shooting guard, small forward type that a good team will probably like in draft. Dylan Jones is a 4-year college player out of Weber State University who was Big Sky Player of the Year last year, averaging 21 points per game, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 steals, which are absolutely absurd numbers. He shot 49% from the field and 32% from 3, which is on par with his career averages. He did shoot 82% from the free throw line, though, for his career, including 86% in his final season. He's very strong and projects best as a small forward, but is a bit undersized for that position at 6'4.5" with a 6'11" wingspan, 8'4.5" standing reach. And he's a high field player who can really pass the ball, plays hard, plays gritty, rebounds the ball, but there's translatability questions with his game going to the NBA level. But there are serious translatability questions with his game going up to the NBA level. He struggles shooting the ball, so he might not be able to play well as a floor spacer, and he's not going to have as many on-ball reps as he did playing for a Big Sky school. Also, he got a lot of buckets off of drives where he utilized his strength and kind of bullied his way into the lane. That's not going to work as well against bigger, stronger NBA players and against better rim protectors and shot blockers. So it's hard to say if he can really score at the next level. Defensively, as I said, bit undersized for the small forward position, a little bit slow defending shooting guards, but it's tough not to like the way he rebounds and passes the ball and hope that he could just figure out the scoring and the shooting, which could make him a Swiss Army knife off a bench. Trenton Flowers is a 19-year-old American-born wing who initially committed to the University of Louisville, but then decided to go play for Adelaide in the National Basketball League. He played 14 minutes a game, averaging 5.5 points and 3 rebounds on 44% from the field and 36% from 3. He was a big point guard in high school, but ended up switching over to the wing once he got to the NBL. But I like that he's young, but has had experience playing different positions already. He's 6'6.5" without shoes, 6'8" wingspan, 8'4.5" standing reach, which makes him a bit undersized for the small forward position, but I think he can play that shooting guard position. He's a good athlete, can handle a ball, quick off the dribble, but he needs to get a lot stronger. He's not somebody that finishes well through contact unless he can rise up over the defense first. His three-point shot should be fine, but he likely needs to be a good shooter at the next level. But in the best case scenario, he's an athletic wing that can make plays for others, attack off the dribble, and knock down shots. He's one of the higher upside guys in the second round. Antonio Reeves is yet another 5-year college player. Started his career at Illinois State, played there 3 years, and then played the final 2 seasons for the University of Kentucky. This Kentucky team, of course, had Rob Dillingham, Reed Shepherd, DJ Wagner, but you can make the case that Reeves was the best guard on that team last season, as he averaged 20 points per game, shooting 51% from the field and 45% from 3. To put it simply, he is a pure bucket getter. I actually think he has some sneaky upside as someone who could be a sixth-man caliber piece down the line. He'll probably never start. His defense isn't good enough. He doesn't pass the ball well enough and has some shaky shot selection at times. He's also on the older side at 23 years old, but coming in at 6'4.5" without shoes, 6'8" wingspan, 8'4.5" standing reach, he has good enough size to play that shooting guard position, especially in a bench role. And I think he's just skilled enough, just shifty enough that his scoring could translate to the next level. Adem Bona is a lot of fun. He's a center out of UCLA, spent 2 years there, and he's an athletic freak, a rim runner, a shot blocker that had to play a little bit of a bigger offensive role for a really bad UCLA team last year. He averaged 12 points per game, 6 rebounds, and 1.8 blocks, while shooting 59% from 2. He doesn't shoot threes, and he saw a free throw percentage bump from 57% his freshman year to 69% his sophomore season. His measurements are a bit wacky. He's 6'8" without shoes, but has a 7'4" wingspan, 9 foot standing reach, and I think there's a legitimate chance that he becomes a backup center at the next level, simply because he plays with a crazy amount of energy. He rolls hard, he's a lob target, he can catch the ball at the free throw line, put it on the ground once, and throw down a poster on someone. And I think he'll be a solid defender who can hedge, blitz, play some drop, block some shots. He moves his feet well enough to maybe switch out onto some smaller players. But he's a ton of fun as an energy big and one of the highest floor players in the second round. Ulrich Chomchi is a player out of NBA's Africa Academy and is going to be the youngest player in this NBA draft. He doesn't turn 19 until December 30th and is a very raw big man that is multiple years away from making any sort of impact, but long-term possesses some intriguing upside. At the combine, he measured 6'10" with a 7'4" wingspan and a 9'1" standing reach, giving him legitimate center size. And there's just not much tape on him. There's not much substance. During 3 Africa Academy games, he averaged 13 points, 9 boards, 3 assists, almost 3 blocks, and shot 38% from 3 on 7 attempts per game. But once again, that is the Africa Academy. It's not necessarily the highest level of play. He did play at the Hoop Summit this past year and played in combine scrimmages. He didn't really impress me outside of an occasional block or really nice pass. And basically, you just don't know what you have here with Chomchi. Long term, maybe he's a guy that can knock down threes, block shots, and pass, which could make him a steal as he's likely to get drafted in the second round. But he's just so far away from doing anything well at the NBA level that it's hard to take him before that. Next up is Cam Christie, who is the brother of Lakers guard Max Christie. Max Christie has spent 2 years in the NBA, and Cam is trying to follow in his footsteps. And it's really interesting to compare Cam to Max when he was coming out of college, because they look a lot alike from, of course, their looks as brothers, to the way they shoot the ball, to their measurements. Cam Christie is a shooting guard, 6'4.5" without shoes, 6'8" wingspan, 8'5.5" standing reach, and I think he's actually a better prospect than Max Christie was coming into the league. He shot much better in college. Max shot 31%, Cam Christie shot 39%. I also believe he's a little bit more of a functional athlete and a little bit of a better passer. Max Christie saw some regular rotation minutes for the Lakers this past season and honestly looked pretty solid. And given their similarities, with Cam being a little bit better coming into the league, he's a guy that could rise up into the first round. The defensive side of the ball is rough for Christie, but if a team's drafting him, they're drafting him to knock down three-point shots off the dribble, off the catch, off the move, and then hopefully he can attack closeouts from there when he's run off the line and then either finish at the rim or make a play for someone else. Baylor Shireman is yet another 5-year college player playing 3 seasons at South Dakota State, appearing in the NCAA tournament a couple of times, and then spent his final 2 years at Creighton. His final season was his best as he averaged over 18 points per game, 9 rebounds and 4 assists, shooting 45% from the field and 38% from 3. He should be ready to play a role at the next level as he's a knockdown shooter with some size. He measured 6'6" with a 6'8" wingspan, 8'6.5" standing reach, and he looked really impressive, and he was maybe the best player during draft combine scrimmages. He knows how to play, he knows how to pass, he'll make the right play, make the right decision, plays under control, and knocks down shots. While he's not the most athletic player and that will limit him in his ability to get to the rim and finish, he does make up for that with some craftiness and change of pace moves. But at the next level, he's pretty much just a shooter who can attack closeouts, get downhill, and make the right play. Defensively, I really think he'll struggle at the next level. He's not strong enough to guard bigger players, and he's not quick enough to guard faster players. But teams are always looking for a small forward that can come in off the bench, knock down threes, and make the right play. He'll be interesting to watch on draft night as he might rise as high as the late teens. Johnny Furphy is a one-and-done Australian player out of the University of Kansas who averaged 9 points, 5 rebounds on 46% shooting and 35% from 3. He's a decent athlete who projects as a shooting small forward. He measured 6'7.5" without shoes with a 6'8" wingspan, which isn't that great compared to his height. He has an 8'8.5" standing reach. And his draft stock is firmly in the first round, but I have him as a second round prospect. He should be a decent shooter at the next level, but didn't shoot the best percentage in college. And then everything else with him is a work in progress. He's not a great defender, doesn't move his feet well, needs to get stronger, and also was not a shot creator whatsoever at Kansas. There is some older tape before he got to college creating shots, but I just don't think he's quick enough or a good enough ball handler to do so. Now, you never know, maybe he will develop some sort of off the dribble game, but I just think he's a limited 3-point shooting forward that doesn't provide enough value in other areas. He's still young, he's only 19 years old, so he has some time to figure it out, but I wouldn't take him until the second round. AJ Johnson is a 19-year-old prospect who is a pure upside swing. He did not go to college. Instead, he went to play for the Illawarra Hawks of the National Basketball League. And he didn't play much when he was there, averaging only 8 minutes per game, so his stats are pretty meaningless. But with him being a young, raw offensive player, going the NBL route probably was not the best choice. He might have been more impressive, and his draft stock might have been higher if he went the college route. He played at the NBA Draft Combine and had a couple impressive games. He's a really good functional athlete, is creative with his footwork on finishes, but will also rise up and put a poster on you. He can handle the ball, has some shiftiness, and has some solid size for a shooting guard, coming in at 6'4", with a 6'8.5" wingspan, 8'6" standing reach. He has to learn how to be more under control and make the right play more often. He also has to improve his three-point shot, as right now it's questionable what his role will be. It's going to take a lot of work for him to be a guy that consistently has the ball in his hands at the next level. So if he can't get there, he needs to become a better shooter so he can play off the ball and space the floor. But given his upside, ball handling, shot creation combination, he's an upside pick that could go as high as the late first round, but will probably go somewhere in the second. Tyler Smith out of the G League Ignite is a prototypical stretch 4. At 6'9" with a 7'1" wingspan, 8'9" standing reach, he has the size to play the power forward position, but he's probably not someone that'll slide down to small forward or up to center. This past season, in 22 minutes a game for the Ignite, he averaged 14 points and 5 boards, shooting 48% from the field and 36% from 3. That shot-making ability is legitimate. He shot some step-back threes, some mid-range shots. He has a good shooting stroke, and he'll provide floor spacing to a team immediately. He's also a decent athlete that moves well, but didn't do much off the dribble at all. He's more of a play finisher right now. Actually went to one of the Ignite games and sat right behind their bench, and there was a play that was drawn up for him to dribble, drive, and attack the rim, and there was a lane there, and he did not take it, and his coach got pissed off at him for it and was basically begging him to attack off the dribble. He's just not somebody that's a dribble drive guy. He's pretty limited offensively as just a shooter. He might be one of those players that gets into the league and once it's made an emphasis, develop some sort of dribble drive game. It's just hard to really say considering he didn't really try to attack last year. Defensively, he can make a play here or there, but I think he's pretty rough. I don't think he's a good enough rim protector to play the center spot. I don't think he can switch down onto guards. The hope is that he can just guard power forwards. To me, he's just a limited player. His value lies in his three-point shooting ability, and everything else doesn't really impress me. AJ Mitchell is a Belgian player who spent 3 years at UC Santa Barbara, and in his final season averaged 20 points per game, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists, shooting 50% from the field and 39% from 3. He struggled his first 2 seasons from behind the arc, but really took a jump in year 3, and he's a crafty driver, and he's a crafty guard who has 3-level scoring potential, and I think is just a good enough passer to play the point guard position at the NBA level. He measured in at 6'3", 6'6" wingspan, 8'5" standing reach. I think he's big enough to play the shooting guard position if he needs to. But this guy just has offensive potential because there's just something about the way he's able to find spots on the floor to score from. There's just a way about how he's able to get downhill and get to the rim. He has impressive floaters and touch shots and extended layups that should work in the league. And he has a legitimate chance to be the biggest steal in the second round, and I could see a team liking him at the back end of the first. Tyler Kolek is a 4-year college player who spent his freshman season at George Mason before spending his final 3 years at the University of Marquette, leading them to back-to-back NCAA tournament appearances. During his final season in college, he averaged 15 points and almost 8 assists per game, shooting 50% from the field and 39% from 3, and he projects as an NBA-ready point guard that can come in right away and play a backup point guard role on a good team. The 3-point shooting should definitely translate, and the passing was extremely impressive. He had over a 2.5 to 1 assist to turnover ratio. He is a bit undersized, which will hurt him on the defensive end. He's only 6'1" without shoes, with a 6'3" wingspan and a 7'11" standing reach. And I'm also not sure he's going to be able to consistently create his own shot at the next level or consistently finish around the rim against more athletic shot blocking big men. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Tyus Jones, where he'll come in, he'll run your offense, he'll make the right play, make the right pass, can run some pick and roll, has a little bit of shiftiness to him, and then he'll knock down threes. Kyle Filipowski was a star last year for Duke in his sophomore season. He spent 2 years there, averaging about 15 to 16 points per game, 8 to 9 rebounds. In this final season, averaged almost 3 assists. And this was on shooting splits of 51% from the field, 35% from 3, and 67% from the line. And Filipowski is a big man that people like because of his shooting ability and his ability to put the ball on the floor and make a play for himself or others. I just have serious reservations about those things on top of his position and who he guards at the next level. Filipowski measured in at 6'11" with a 6'10.5" wingspan. Yes, that's a negative wingspan with an 8'11" standing reach. I think he's a little too undersized for the center position. He's not the strongest player. And then at the power forward position. I don't think he can slide his feet well enough to guard there consistently, at least against some of the better power forwards in the league. And for his career at Duke, he only shot 31% from three and only 72% from the free throw line. I think his form's a little stiff. I think he might have struggles stretching it out to the NBA three-point line. I just don't really buy him as a shooter at the next level. And then some of his shot creation was more so methodical. He's not the quickest guy. He's not the best ball handler. I just don't think he's going to be able to consistently create at the NBA level, especially at the power forward position. And he also got some post-up touches in college that he won't get at the next level, and I don't think he'll be as successful in the post against bigger NBA players. Filipowski was expected to enter the draft last year, and even then, I didn't really like how his game translated to the NBA. I still don't, and it seems like his draft stock has been slipping, but there's still potential that he goes in the top 15 to 16 picks. Ryan Dunn has all defensive potential written all over him. Some have even penned him as the best point of attack defensive prospect in years. He's a 6'6" forward with a 7'2" wingspan, 8'7" standing reach, and he truly has potential to guard all 5 positions on the floor. He competes against bigger players, he gets down in a stance and slides his feet against smaller players. He's very disruptive on the defensive end as a playmaker, as in 27 minutes last year for the University of Virginia, he averaged 2.3 blocks per game and 1.3 steals. This was his second year at Virginia. He only played 13 minutes a game as a freshman, and he's the type of versatile defensive forward that teams salivate over. What teams won't be salivating over is his offensive game, as he essentially plays like a center. He shot 20% from 3 last year on 1 attempt per game, and only shot 53% from the free throw line, which is very bad for a forward, which is absolutely horrendous, especially for a forward. When he'd catch the ball on the perimeter, oftentimes he just looked to go and hand it off. In space, if he had a straight line drive to the rim, he looked impressive. He's a good athlete, but he's the type of player that could get played off the floor in a playoff setting due to his utter lack of a shot and overall offensive game. If he can end up on a team that can put 4 shooters around him, where he can just play in a dump-off spot around the rim and finish plays, then his offense might not be too much of a detriment, and you may be able to play him consistently, because defensively he provides a ton of value and can be a game changer on that end. And ultimately, maybe he's an upside play if a team feels like they can figure out his shot and get him shooting to about league average, because that's all he needs to become probably a top 10 player from this draft and one of the very best 3-and-D role players in the league. I love Jonathan Mogbo. He has an interesting basketball journey and is an absolutely unique player. He was a 4-year college player. Year 1, he spent at Independence Community College. Year 2, he spent at Northeastern Oklahoma A&M. Year 3, he finally made it up to D1, playing for Missouri State, averaging 8 points per game and 7 boards. And then last year, he played for San Francisco in the WCC and broke out, averaging 14 points per game with 10 rebounds and 3.6 assists. Now, here's where things get wacky. He's a center that could maybe play some power forward if he's playing next to another big that can shoot, as Mogbo just simply is not a shooter at all, but he's only 6'6". And while that seems very undersized for the center position, he makes up for it with a 7'2" wingspan and a 9'1" standing reach, which gives him a taller standing reach than guys like Adembona, Deron Holmes, and Kyle Filipowski. He was a late growth spurt type of guy, super athletic, dunked the ball a ton last year at San Francisco, had some really impressive highlight dunks. But what really intrigues me about him is his ability to handle the ball, his ability to drive, and his ability to pass at that center spot. I think that could make him a very unique player. I also think he could be a really impactful defender at the next level. I think he'll be able to switch out and guard guards. He can play the passing lanes, average 1.6 steals per game last year. And although his lack of size might cause him some troubles trying to protect the rim, he provides a lot of unique traits that I'm sure teams would love. Jalen Bridges has been a notable name in college basketball. He was a 5-year college player who redshirted his first year at West Virginia before starting for them for 2 more seasons. He then transferred to Baylor for the past couple of years, and this is a Baylor team that's been one of the better teams in the nation, who has churned out some draft prospects, including 2 that are ranked higher than him on this big board. So in a way, Bridges has been front and center, but also under the radar. And finally, his name is starting to garner some buzz regarding this year's NBA draft. Before the withdrawal deadline, he was seen as a borderline draftable player by consensus, but now he's getting some serious buzz at the end of the first round. And that's because he projects as a high floor 3-and-D small forward. His three-point shooting was a bit variable in college. He shot 41% during his freshman and senior seasons, but only 32% as a sophomore and junior. But I'm buying his stock as a three-point shooter. He had some really impressive threes, mostly off the catch last year, but also a few off the dribble. Contests don't really bother him. And then defensively, he is an absolute menace. He can slide his feet, get down in the stance, has active hands, and I think he'll be a positive contributor at that end in the NBA level. At 6'7" without shoes, with a 6'10" wingspan, 8'9" standing reach, he has above average size at the small forward position and could even slide up to power forward. There's going to be a winning team that likes him in the late first or early second, that views him as somebody that could come in and maybe make an impact right away. DaRon Holmes is a 3-year big man out of the University of Dayton who was one of the best players in college basketball last season. He's a bit of a tweener big man, coming in at 6'9" with a 7'1" wingspan, 9' standing reach. And basically, he's very skilled, but might not have a position at the next level. During his final season in college, he averaged 20 points per game, 8.5 rebounds, and 2.5 assists, while shooting 54% from the field and almost 39% from three. That was on 2.5 attempts per game, so solid volume. And he showed off some shot creation ability, even brought the ball up the floor at times for Dayton. He really likes the spin move, can Euro step in the lane. He also created for teammates well for a big man, but I just don't know if he's physical enough, a good enough shot blocker, or a good enough rebounder to consistently play the center position at the next level. And I'm not sure his offensive skill set is really that special at a power forward spot. And I don't know if he's going to be able to consistently stay in front of some of the quicker power forwards in the league. Also, how does he function as more of a role player? He was used like an absolute star in college, but his role is going to get scaled down in the NBA. There's also rumors that he has a draft promise that could be as high as OKC at 12, but other rumors list Denver at 28 as a potential landing spot. He's skilled, but has some question marks. Jacoby Walter was seen as a potential top 5 pick earlier this season, but is slipping down draft boards after his lone season at the University of Baylor. He's a shooting guard who measured in at 6'4" with a 6'10" wingspan, 8'6.5" standing reach, and averaged 14 points per game and 4 rebounds, but only 1.4 assists. He shot 37% from the field and 34% from three. And the reason his stock has slipped is he just wasn't the shot creator that people thought he was going to be at the next level. He's just not a particularly quick player, not a particularly special ball handler, and was relegated to primarily being a three-point shooter. He took more than half his attempts from behind the arc, but he also got to the line 5 times a game. He might have some upside as a shot creator. The other reason he slipped was he wasn't as good defensively as people thought he was going to be. He got blown by quicker guards far too much, and he just doesn't have a lot of versatility on that end. He'll make sense for a team that needs shooting, that might want a little bit of shot creation upside with that, but it's tough to expect much more than that. Keyshawn George is a surprise one-and-done prospect from the University of Miami. He's a 3-and-D wing that measured in at 6'7" with a 6'10" wingspan, 8'9" standing reach, and he started about half his games for Miami, averaging 7.5 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists, while shooting 43% from the field and 41% from three. Basically, he's a 3-and-D prospect that shows flashes of impressive ball handling ability, but it probably is not functional at the next level due to a lack of strength and speed. He really struggles creating separation at the next level, and while his ball handling is impressive for his size, he's not exactly shifty with it, doesn't have the strength to use his body to drive the lane, didn't get to the rim much at all in the half court, so he's more likely going to be a 3-and-D guy that can move his feet a little bit on the perimeter and use his length. But there were enough ball handling and passing flashes that maybe a team thinks that they can develop that. Nikola Jurisic is a Serbian wing who had a really impressive NBA draft combine. At 6'7" with a 6'8" wingspan, 8'6.5" standing reach, Jurisic has the size to play the three, as well as some intriguing skills. He can really pass the ball, had really impressive playmaking flashes at the NBA draft combine. He just has a really good feel for where teammates are and the right play to make. He also can attack a bit off the dribble, and while he only shot 30% last season, he should be fine as a 3-point shooter. And while he's not going to impress you defensively on the offensive side of the ball, he possesses some upside. He's likely to go in the second round, and I could see a team viewing him as a potential point forward down the line. I don't know if his ball handling or quickness is good enough to consistently play make or bring the ball up the floor, but he has some skills. He played really well late in his season overseas. Unfortunately, he might not come over right away. He might be a stash candidate. We'll have to wait and see. What's funny is I have Zach Edey here on my big board, but he might be the biggest name player in this entire draft because he was a dominant force at Purdue and won back-to-back College Player of the Years. And Purdue has been very notable, as 2 years ago in the NCAA tournament, they were a number 1 seed that lost to a number 16 seed for only the second time ever. But then last season, they redeemed themselves. Zach Edey led them to a national championship berth that they lost to Donovan Clingan and UConn. Edey is freakishly big. He's 7'4" without shoes with a 7'11" wingspan and a 9'7" standing reach. He has really soft touch on hook shots and was a post-up nightmare for teams to deal with. He'd score through doubles. He'd punish teams on the offensive glass. And teams punished him by fouling him like crazy. He had an 80% free throw rate last season, which is absolutely absurd. He averaged over 11 free throw attempts per game. And most times when you get bigs like this, they're not that good from the free throw line, but he shot 71% from there. So you can't just simply foul him because he will shoot a good enough clip from the free throw line that it just doesn't really work out for you. He averaged 25 points per game and 12 rebounds on top of that. And although the NBA is bigger, stronger, and more athletic, he still will have a unique advantage given his size at the next level. But the question marks with him is his ability to defend in space, which as an NBA big man, you have to do. And it's tough to see him being more than just a drop scheme big, and I don't know if he can run drop all that well. I think he's going to be somebody that you can run your offense through, you can give him post-up touches, and he'll convert. I think he needs to get a little bit better as a pick-and-roll big man. He wasn't used that much in the pick and roll last year at Purdue. And then as a rim protector, he didn't block as many shots as you would think given his size, averaging only 2.2 per game, which is a good number, but when you're 7'4", he probably should have been blocking more shots. I think Edey projects as a really, really good backup big man. I just don't know if he can defend well enough to be a starter on a good team at the next level. But he brings a lot of fanfare and he's a fun player to have. And right now it seems like he's probably going to go in the lottery. This year's big man group is a ton of fun, and Yves Missi is a perfect example of that. He was a one-and-done player at Baylor, and he is an athletic freak at the center spot. Measuring in at 6'11" with a 7'2" wingspan and a 9'1.5" standing reach. He's a little bit more undersized compared to some centers in this year's class, but there is some legitimate size in this year's draft, and what Missi has over probably any other big in this class is his athleticism. He runs the floor like a gazelle, he's a serious lob target, and he blocks a ton of shots. And part of his shot blocking that I'm really impressed with is both how quick he gets off the floor as well as his second jump ability. Last season, he averaged almost 11 points per game with 5.5 rebounds. He's not that skilled. He's not going to shoot threes. He only shot 61% from the charity stripe, and he averaged 0.4 assists to 1.1 turnovers. But a team is not going to draft him to do anything with the ball. They're going to draft him to play some defense, to switch out and guard guards, which I think he can do, as well as run the floor in transition and roll hard to the rim, catch lobs, and throw them down. Isaiah Collier is a one-and-done player from USC that was in conversations for the number 1 overall pick before his stock slipped tremendously as he struggled with production at the college level and dealt with an injury that cost him some time. However, he did come back from that injury and looked pretty good, and he was playing for a terrible USC team where he didn't have to come back and play for that team. He could have shut it down. He could have just focused on the draft, but he came back, played hard, played with something to prove, and I truly respect that. He's 6'2.5" with a 6'5" wingspan, 8'1.5" standing reach, and he is a very quick player, but also a bit of a below the rim finisher. He's not vertically explosive. He's also very strong and can use his body on drives. Collier's value comes from his quickness. He has a very quick first step. Although he is a bit of a below-the-rim finisher, he's more in the mold of somebody who's going to use his strong frame to bump a shot blocker off balance in order to get a shot off, or just simply putting his shoulder down and blowing past guys with his physical driving style. Last year at USC, he averaged 16 points per game and 4 assists, while shooting 49% from the field and 34% from 3. The three-point shot is a bit of a question mark. His form is a little bit stiff and is truly going to be the make or break thing for him at the next level. If he can improve that shot, then it's going to be easier for him to blow by guys and make plays. He'll have more time to make reads. But if not, then I think he's going to struggle turning the corner at the next level. He also was a bit turnover prone, could get a little bit out of control, make some boneheaded plays. And defensively, he's probably going to be below average, but he did have some competitive moments last year, so maybe he'll be fine on that end. It's tough given his tools, but he may survive there. He makes sense as an upside play for a team that needs a long-term point guard. Kel'el Ware is a 2-year college player, spending his freshman year at Oregon and his sophomore season at Indiana. As a sophomore, he averaged 20 points per game, 12 rebounds, and 2.3 blocks on 59% shooting from the field and 42% shooting from 3 on 1.7 attempts per game. However, he only shot 63% from the free throw line, and free throw percentage is a good indicator of future shooting success from 3. He's a center with legitimate size that can move well. At the combine, he measured 7 feet with a 7'4.5" wingspan, 9'4.5" standing reach, which gives him pretty good size at that position. And the knock on him is his motor. People have questioned whether he truly loves the game of basketball, which sucks because he's extremely talented, and everything in him is potential-based. He should be a solid rim protector given his size and athleticism, and then he has potential to be a 3-level scoring big man, which is very intriguing. But like I said, I don't know if that 3-point shot is real. He can put the ball on the floor a little bit. He's the type of high upside pick that a team could make in the lottery, but he also possesses some legitimate downside. Jared McCain is a combo guard out of Duke and one of the best shooters in this draft class. Coming in at 6'2" with a 6'4" wingspan, 8'2" standing reach. The one-and-done guard averaged 14 points per game, 5 rebounds and 2 assists last year, shooting 46% from the field and 41% from 3. And he would take over games with his 3-point shooting ability, including one in the NCAA tournament, including games in the NCAA tournament where he put up 30 points on 8 for 11 from 3 against James Madison and 32 points on 5 for 11 from 3 against NC State. McCain was primarily used in an off-ball role at Duke, but measurements suggest that he's a point guard. He has been on the record saying that he can do more off the dribble than he was allowed to show at Duke, and that he thinks he'll be somebody that can create shots for both himself and others. He's very well spoken, a high character guy that at the very least can be a bench shooter, but the best case scenario would be him tapping into that creation ability. He probably won't be a good defender at the next level, but that's not what I'm worried about. He has one of the highest floors for a one-and-done player in this class. Tristan da Silva is an NBA-ready forward out of the University of Colorado who measured at 6'8" with a 6'10" wingspan and an 8'8.5" standing reach. He was a 4-year college player who grew into a really impressive player, averaging 16 points per game, 5 rebounds, and 2.5 assists in his senior season, while shooting 49% from the field and 39% from 3. He's going to be a forward that can space the floor and make the right play for others. He had some really impressive passing moments last year. And then on the other side of the ball, he's going to play some good team defense and is solid in that area. On the ball defensively, he's not too good. He doesn't do the best job staying in front of players. But ultimately, if you don't have him matched up against stars, he's not going to hurt your defense at all and may help it. He's the type of connective piece, floor spacing role player that teams love, and I expect him to end up on a contender and play right away. Pacome Dadier is one of the most intriguing players in this year's draft as a wing with legitimate size, shooting potential, and upside. He's 6'8" without shoes, 6'9" wingspan, 8'11.5" standing reach, which is good enough measurables to play either forward position. He'd need to get stronger to play the power forward position, so right now he's more of a small forward. But I really like Dadier because I think he's going to be a knockdown shooter at the next level and has potential as a shot creator. He's still only going to be 18 years old on draft night, and last season playing for Ulm in Germany, averaged 6.6 points per game, shooting 50% from the field and 36% from 3. And his 3-point shooting is impressive to me as both a catch-and-shoot guy and also somebody who hits some step-back threes at times. And I really like his form, and I think he projects as a 37 to 38% 3-point shooter at the next level, with some of it being off the dribble. For a 6'8" wing, that's very intriguing. He also had some flashes of being able to break down a defender off the dribble, some crafty finishes, and while there's still a long ways to go in order to develop into somebody that can have the ball in his hands consistently and make plays, the fact that he has that upside as a big shooter is something that I think should easily get him drafted in the first round. Nikola Topic is truly unique. both from his traits, his upside, to some of the red flags surrounding him. He's a Serbian point guard who spent time with Red Star last year. He won't turn 19 until August, and he's a big playmaking pass-first point guard, which is an archetype that is definitely unique and teams like. However, after initially being thought to be 6'6" with a 7-foot wingspan, Topic measured in at 6'6" without shoes, but with a wingspan of only 6'5.5", much shorter than expected. Last season, he averaged 14.5 points, 5.5 assists, while shooting 50% from the field, but only 30% from three. And the three-point shot is a major question mark for him. He shoots a flat ball. His form is kind of weird. It's a bit of a set shot. And I truly think he's going to struggle to knock down threes at the next level, even if defenders go under pick and rolls. And ultimately, that's going to make it tougher for him to drive the lane, collapse the defense, and finish, or collapse the defense and kick out to shooters. He also has a torn ACL, so it's unlikely that he'll see any real time next season. He may be able to return by the end of the year, but it's basically going to be a redshirt season for Topic. He possesses one of the highest upsides in this draft. If he can figure out that three-point shot, then his playmaking should come alive. He could truly be an 8 to 9 assists per game guy one day. He's also impressive as a finisher, albeit below the rim. It's just tough to look past the multiple red flags that he has. Cody Williams flirted with number one pick potential early in his season at Colorado. He's a one-and-done player, the brother of OKC's Jalen Williams, but he is a bit different. He was fantastic early in the year as a shot creator, somebody that could break down defenders off the dribble, and had some really impressive finishing moments. But he dealt with injuries all year long, and by the end of the season, he wasn't really himself. At the draft combine, he measured 6'6.5" without shoes, with a whopping 7'1" wingspan, 8'7" standing reach. He's a skilled small forward who can handle the ball a little bit, put it on the ground. Hit threes at a good clip last year, 41%, but only on 1.7 attempts per game. And he's a bit of an enigma because he showcased a lot of things that teams like in a small forward, from the creation to the shot making to the finishing. However, there was a lack of assertiveness, which could have been due to playing on an older team and trying to fit in. KJ Simpson and Tristan Da Silva are both upperclassmen that will get drafted this year, but he just was not aggressive enough, especially from the three-point line. It's hard to put too much stock into that 41% three-point clip because of the low volume, and also he wasn't the best shooter before college. He's also a finesse finisher, and although his percentages there were good, but it's hard to tell how he'll finish at the next level. In the NBA, you have to create a little bit more contact on your drives. You have to be able to jump into the chest of a rim protector. The injury issues aren't a good thing. He's also not a great rebounder. Defensively, a bit of a mixed bag. I could see him being good there given the way he can move and his physical tools, but also he wasn't truly impactful at Colorado. He's a tough player to figure out, but if he ends up like his brother, he might be a steal at the back half of the lottery. Carlton Carrington, otherwise known as Bub, is a one-and-done player out of the University of Pittsburgh. He was looked at as a potential lottery pick to start the season, and then had a bit of a slump before turning it on late in the year. At 6'4" without shoes, with a 6'8" wingspan and 8'3" standing reach, he projects as a solidly sized scoring point guard that passes well enough. Carrington is a movement pattern guy for me, and what I mean by that is I love the shiftiness he plays with, some of the change of pace he has in his game, and just the way he's able to get into jump shots off the dribble. He shot around 50% on mid-range shots, which is a very impressive clip. And while he only shot 32% from three last season, I think he's going to be just fine as a shooter. He shot some really tough attempts. His shooting form is fine, and I think the biggest thing for him at the next level is to get stronger, to see if he can improve his first step a little bit, because ultimately he really struggled at the rim. He didn't get to the rim much, didn't finish well when he got there, and the intrigue in him is his potential to be a 3-level scorer, but I think the rim finishing stuff is the furthest away and the biggest question mark. I think he's going to be a deadly pull-up jump shooter who can work in hesitations off that, which would give him opportunities to get to the rim. So if he can improve the rim finishing stuff, then he has legitimate scoring upside that's only matched by a couple players in this year's class. He also had some really solid moments defensively last year, and given his size of the point guard position, I think he'll be able to be competitive at that spot. He's rising up draft boards, and if there was more teams at the back end of the lottery that needed a point guard, I think that's where he'd go. However, the draft isn't really laid out that way, so expect him to go right after the lottery. Devin Carter is the grittiest player in this draft. At 6'2" with a 6'9" wingspan and an 8'2" standing reach, Carter is the best pound-for-pound rebounder I've seen enter the league since Josh Hart. He spent 1 year at South Carolina and 2 at Providence, and he took a leap in his junior season after star teammate Bryce Hopkins got injured, thrusting Carter into a more on-ball primary role. His shooting was a struggle during his first 2 years, but last season it took a jump to almost 39% from 3. He's a strong and physical driver, and is very capable as a finisher using weird angles and release points to beat his defender at the rim. On the other end, he might be the best perimeter defender in the class. He's great at navigating screens, recovers extremely well, and plays bigger than his size. He's a disruptive defensive playmaker, and his 6'9" wingspan is a legitimate tool. He should be just fine switching up onto wings and smaller forwards. And as far as his NBA role goes, he won't be a primary playmaker like he was in college, but he should be an elite role player that'll be a fan favorite wherever he lands. I think Jalen Tyson is one of the most underrated players in this draft. At 6'5.5" with a 6'8" wingspan and an 8'6.5" standing reach, he's a wing that can play the 2 or the 3 and possesses a lot of traits I look for in a draft sleeper. He played 3 years in college at Texas, Texas Tech, and Cal. He had legitimate reasons for transferring both times. And last year he carried a pretty bad Cal team, playing in pretty much any role imaginable. He averaged 20 points per game, 7 rebounds, and 3.5 assists, shooting 46% from the field and 36% from 3. And he really impressed me last year because he's freaking shifty, man. He could break down guys consistently off the dribble. His footwork is really good, and I think he's going to be somebody that can create shots for himself at the next level. He shot 3s off the dribble, mid-range shots, floaters. To put it simply, he has a bag, and it's always nice to get that at the small forward position. He also shot 40% from 3 his sophomore season, so I could see him being a knockdown shooter at the next level. And he made some really impressive passing reads last year. It wasn't fully consistent, but he reads the game quickly. He has a good attitude, competitive guy that I think has some serious creation upside with a pretty high floor. I did not evaluate Terrence Shannon Jr. until recently, and there's a good reason for that. He was on trial for rape, but everything that came out about that showed him as innocent, and he was deemed not guilty in court. And while I recommend you to look into that court case yourself based on the information provided in it, I fully believe that he was innocent, and by all accounts, he's a high character guy. And by all accounts, he's a very good basketball player, leading Illinois to a Big Ten championship this past season. And Shannon is super intriguing to me because he's extremely quick off the dribble, really good first step, but then also drives strong and is not afraid of contact. He will throw himself at the chests of rim protectors, had some insanely acrobatic finishes last year, and I think his dribble drive game will translate to the NBA. He's 6'6" without shoes, with a 6'9" wingspan, 8'4" standing reach, which is a little bit on the small side. And while he is on the older side, he was a 5-year college player, spending 3 years at Texas Tech and 2 at Illinois. He's coming off such a fantastic season, averaging 23 points, 4 rebounds, 2.5 assists, shooting 48% from the field and 36% from 3. That 3-point shot is a little bit of a question mark. He was a little below average as a shooter during his time in college, but this past year he shot a ton of off the dribble 3s, off of pick and rolls, contested shots, and I think at the next level he truly is a special 3-level scorer that also won't hurt you too much defensively. He had some good moments there last year. It'll be interesting to see where he goes, given that his draft process was a little bit messed up by this trial. Ultimately, I think he's a lottery talent. I don't even know where to get started with Tijon Salon. He might be the most unique forward prospect that we've seen in quite some time. He's still only 18 years old, making him one of the youngest players in the draft, and played for Cholet Basket in the French League last season. He's another French prospect in this draft, which is loaded with them, and he has legitimate size at 6'9", with a 7'1.5" wingspan and a 9'2" standing reach, which is equal to Alex Sars. And he is very raw offensively, but has shown flashes in every area you look at if you're looking for upside. On one possession, he may have a really impressive athletic off-the-dribble play, and then on the next play, he might look like an absolute train wreck, get too sped up, trip over his own feet, and turn over the ball. You really never know what you're going to get right now with Tijon Salon, but he could go in the top 10 because of his upside, and his upside lies in his ability to knock down three-point shots. He didn't shoot the best percentage at 31% last year, but he shot some wild three-point attempts, some step backs, contested shots, had almost too much confidence from beyond the three-point line. So if that can be reeled in a little bit, he should shoot a better percentage in the NBA, and you do like that he has shooting confidence to begin with. The on-ball creation is a long ways away, but given his youth move, if he ends up in the perfect situation, maybe that's something that can be developed, him being a threat off the dribble. And then defensively, he was inconsistent, but moves decently well, played the passing lanes really well, and when he leaked out in transition, he was an absolute threat. But he didn't protect the rim as well as you would hope, and he got blown by a little bit too much off the dribble. Off the ball, he was a mess defensively and has a lot of learning to do there. Ultimately, he is the epitome of a boom or bust prospect. He might be the best player from this draft, or he might be the worst pick in the first round. There's been so much buzz around Donovan Clingan's name during this year's draft cycle, from the potential that he could go number 1 to Atlanta, to a bunch of teams trying to trade up for him. It's not too much of a surprise, given that he has a winning pedigree, was a key part in UConn's back-to-back championships, and he is a fantastic shot-blocking center with legitimate size. He measured 7'2" without shoes, with a 7'7" wingspan, a 9'7" standing reach, which is equal to Zach Edey, and he's one of the safest picks in this draft and possesses one of the highest floors. The biggest question mark with him might be the foot injury issues that he dealt with in college. You never like to see that with a big man. And then while he was really good defensively, can he guard in space at the next level? Can he run different pick and roll schemes? Can he hedge? Can he blitz? At bare minimum, he's a drop big man that should protect the rim very, very well, as during his final year in college, he averaged 2.5 blocks in 22 minutes a game on top of 13 points and 7.5 boards. He also showed some good passing flashes running a pro-style system at UConn, and if you're really optimistic, he shot the 3-ball well during the draft combine and has decent looking form, so maybe that can be tapped into long term. And then around the rim, I think he needs to get a little better finishing. He might struggle there in the league, but at bare minimum, he's going to help out your defense and could be an anchor on that end, while being able to make a basic play offensively without making too many mistakes. Reed Sheppard is a one-and-done guard out of Kentucky, and he's an absolute sniper. Last year, this dude shot 52% from 3 on over 4 attempts per game, and there's a chance that one day he might be the best shooter in the NBA. He averaged 12.5 points, 4.5 assists, and 2.5 steals, and while he looks really good if you just look at him as a three-point specialist, I think he has the potential for more. He registered a 42-inch vertical leap at the combine, and was able to use the threat of his shot in order to beat defenders off the dribble. He has good touch on floaters, good body control on finishes, and while he did measure poorly, he's 6'2" with a 6'3" wingspan and a 7'9.5" standing reach. He's still competitive defensively, has quick hands, is pesty on that end, got a lot of deflections, a lot of steals, but he'll probably only be able to guard point guards in the league, which creates some fit questions, as I do like him better as an off-ball player with his shooting threat. So if he can end up on a team with a point forward type of player to take some of the playmaking responsibilities away from him, that would be best. He can definitely make plays for others, he can handle the ball, but he projects more as a combo guard to me. But that shooting is a true difference maker and maybe the best skill for any player in this entire draft. Zachary Richeche has a chance to go number 1 overall, and he's been at the top of draft boards almost all season long. At 6'9", he has the size to play either forward position, and he projects as an NBA-ready, high-floor 3-and-D player. He played last season for J.L. Berg in the French League, and was an insanely good shooter to start the year. His three-point percentage trailed off a little bit, but he finished up right at 39%. His shooting has really developed in the past year. There's some, including myself, who wonder just how good of a shooter he is. But defensively, he guarded guards, he guarded forwards, he had some really good moments on that end. And a big forward who's a 3-and-D role player that can switch down and guard guards is an archetype that teams are in love with, and it's why he might go number 1 overall. Truthfully, I don't think his upside justifies him going there. He had some moments of creation here or there, but his handle is loose, he's very upright, he doesn't move too well with his dribble, he's not the quickest, most explosive guy, also averaged less than an assist per game in 23 minutes. I just don't think he'll really come close to being an all-star, but he'll definitely be a good role player. Matas Buzelis is a forward from the G League Ignite that in the preseason had some buzz for the #1 overall pick. He was looked at as a tall stretch forward that could shoot the ball from 3 and put it on the floor and make plays. Unfortunately, the shooting did not translate well to the G League, as in his one G League season, he averaged 14 points per game, 6.5 boards, 2 assists and 2 blocks, while shooting 46% from the field and a dismal 26% from 3. Buzelis seemed to struggle to adjust to a much longer three-point line than in high school, but on the flip side, he looked like a much better defender than I thought he'd be. He had some very impressive moments of secondary rim protection, which should lend well for him playing the power forward position, was able to slide his feet on the perimeter a little better than I thought, and while he's probably not going to be somebody you want to switch down onto guards, he has a real chance to guard both forward positions at an above average level, which was not thought to be the case a year ago. He has a tight handle and moves decent with his dribble for a guy his size. He had some real playmaking flashes, although they weren't consistent. He's capable of hitting impressive mid-range fadeaways, and for him, hopefully the three-point shooting last year was a fluke. He was a knockdown shooter before he got to the G League, and if he can become a knockdown shooter in the league, then he's going to be a very impressive scoring threat. He also needs to get a little bit stronger. That would help him on some of his finishing. But anytime you can get a 6'9" forward that can handle the ball and has potential as a shot creator, passer, shooter, and defender, that gives him a high ceiling. Ron Holland is a wing from the G League Ignite that had a lot of buzz this year about his potential to go #1 overall. But in the past few months, his stock has fallen to the back end of the top 10, with a rumor here or there that he might slip out of the lottery. I think that would be ludicrous. He led this G League Ignite team as an 18-year-old. He's still going to be 18 on draft night. He has very solid measurements at 6'6.5" with a 6'11" wingspan, 8'8" standing reach. And he is a high motor athlete that plays some terrific defense, and that should be his calling card at the next level. He's strong, uses his long arms to disrupt plays, recovers well, can block shots. And then on the offensive end, I think he has some upside. He has a very solid first step, very impressive body control, is able to decelerate and finish in the lane. For an 18-year-old to come into the G League and average 20 points per game, 7 rebounds, and 3 assists as a defensive prospect is very impressive. The key for him will be his jump shot. He only shot 24% from 3, but if he can become a better shooter, it'll make it even easier for him to get to the rim, and he might have one of the highest upsides in this class, and he has potential to be a two-way star one day. It's not often you see 23-year-old prospects with a chance to get drafted in the top 5. However, Dalton Connect is that rare exception. He's a 5-year college player, but was only Division I for 3 of those seasons. His first 2 he spent at Northeastern Junior College, before spending 2 seasons at Northern Colorado, and last year at the University of Tennessee. He went to Tennessee to improve his defense, but he ended up absolutely carrying that team offensively en route to SEC Player of the Year. He averaged 22 points per game, 5 rebounds and 2 assists, shooting 46% from the field and 40% from 3 on 6.5 attempts per game. At the next level, he projects as a knockdown shooter. Contests do not bother him. He can rise and fire. He can hit step back threes, deep threes, you name it. And I think he's just big enough to play the small forward position, as he's 6'5" with a 6'9" wingspan, 8'7.5" standing reach, which is on par with guys like PJ Hall, Jalen Wells, and Ryan Dunn. If Connect ends up in a situation where he can play right away, he has as good of a chance as anyone to win Rookie of the Year. He's as NBA ready as they come due to his shooting ability from both the mid-range and 3. But I also like a little bit of the on-ball juice that he provides, as he's a better athlete than your normal 3-point specialist. He was able to get downhill and attack the rim last year, has a certain level of craft and feel that I like attacking the rim, had some really impressive offhand finishes, especially in transition, and at bare minimum, he's a legitimate shooting threat. But at his maximum, he's a 20-point per game 3-level scorer. He might struggle defensively, but offensively, he's fantastic, and in a draft with a lot of question marks, he doesn't have many. After spending time at Overtime Elite, Rob Dillingham's draft stock was not that high coming into this season, but he surpassed all expectations at Kentucky and now is a consensus top 10 draft pick. There has been a rumor that he might fall out of the lottery, but I think that would be absolutely ludicrous. He was one of the best shot makers in college last year for Kentucky, as he came off the bench playing 23 minutes a game, yet averaging 15 points and 4 assists, on 47% from the field and 44% from 3. He shot some insanely tough step back jumpers, contested shots, and when he got hot, he was the most dangerous guard in the nation, in my opinion. He has legitimate star upside due to that jump shooting and shot making ability. He's going to have to become a little bit better of a passer at the point guard spot and a little bit better getting to and finishing at the rim. That might be a struggle for him as he is a bit undersized. He measured 6'1" without shoes with a 6'3" wingspan, 7'11" standing reach, and he's going to be very rough defensively at the next level due to those measurements. But you're drafting him for his offensive upside, and he might have as good of a chance of anybody in this class to average 20 points per game one day. Stephon Castle is a rare one-and-done player who contributed to his team winning games, as he was a big part in the Connecticut Huskies championship run. He was their go-to on-ball defender, and he is a lockdown guy at the next level. But what's intriguing about him is he could play a couple of different roles in his NBA career depending on how his career progresses. He played point guard in high school, but wing in college. He's 6'5.5" without shoes with a 6'9" wingspan, 8'6" standing reach, which means he's big enough to play either guard position and can probably hold his own at small forward as well. Now, a big storyline with Castle going into this draft is he wants to go somewhere where he's able to play point guard right away, and he didn't work out for teams with entrenched starting point guards. Last season for UConn, he averaged 11 points per game, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists, shooting 47% from the field and 27% from 3. That shot is a big question mark going in, but I think his form improved over the course of the season. He had more of a hitch at the start of the year, and he shot decently from the free throw line at 75%. Basically, the question with him is he just going to be a connective wing that can make the right pass, occasionally make a play off the dribble, and play some lockdown defense? Or does he have true star potential as a lead ball handler and somebody that can create his own? In order to get downhill, he's going to have to shoot the three-point shot better. He doesn't possess elite enough athleticism to blow by guys that aren't guarding him tightly. But if he can become a league average shooter or better on volume, then I could see him being somebody that can turn the corner, develop a really nice mid-range and floater game, and could possess some 3-level scoring ability. I love Castle though because he checks some boxes that are hard to find in a wing, and I think he does have a chance at fulfilling that on-ball creation. Alex Sarr is the top player on my big board. The French big man spent time playing for Perth in the NBL this past season, where he averaged 10 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, and 1.5 blocks in only 18 minutes. And he's my favorite player in this draft because I think he possesses the most two-way upside in the class. He's 7 feet tall without shoes, 7'4" wingspan, 9'2" standing reach, and he blocks a ton of shots, is very quick off the ground, covers space well, and can also switch onto the perimeter and defend guards. He might be somebody that can legitimately guard all 5 positions at the next level, and I think he'll be an all-defensive caliber type of defender. But then offensively, he's very intriguing. He's athletic. He should be a good lob target. But he also showed flashes of being able to put the ball on the floor, some dribble moves, floaters, mid-range pull-ups, three-point shots. He only shot 28% from 3 last year, but he doesn't necessarily need to be a shooting threat in order to be a really good player. He reminds me a bit of Evan Mobley. I just think he possesses a super high floor as a defensive anchor and then enough offensive upside that I could see him being a star down the line. This archetype of big man is hard to find, and normally they go at the top of drafts. Just look at Chet Holmgren, Victor Wembanyama, etc. I don't think Sarr will be as good as those two players, but he has a chance to be able to defend them and provide some of the same skills that they do. Here are the latest rumors with each first-round pick. The Atlanta Hawks are picking at number 1, and my top prospect, Alex Sarr, refused to work out for them. They still might take Sarr. He makes a lot of sense for them, but the other two candidates to go number 1 right now are Zachary Risacher and Donovan Clingan. Risacher is the betting favorite as of now, but we truly do not know who's going to go number 1 to Atlanta. The Washington Wizards are picking at number 2, and if the Hawks don't take Alex Sarr, then it's said that Sarr is a lock to the Wizards. If Sarr does go to the Hawks, then you could see Risacher or Clingan here. It's also said that they're listening to offers for this pick, but ultimately I think they keep it. The Houston Rockets have the 3rd pick, and this is the prime trade-up destination for teams that want to move up in the draft order. The Rockets are looking to be more competitive next year. They got this pick from the Brooklyn Nets. This isn't their own. And you could see teams like the Portland Trailblazers at 7 and 14 or the Memphis Grizzlies, who have 9 and Marcus Smart, trading up to 3 to try and take Donovan Clingan. I don't think the Rockets will take him as they have Alperen Şengün. And right now, the most popular pick in mock drafts to the Rockets is Reed Sheppard. The San Antonio Spurs have the 4th and 8th picks, and at number 4, they'll probably stay here, and I think they're going to take Stephon Castle. He would give San Antonio an elite point of attack defender to pair with Wembanyama's rim protection, which would give teams nightmares for years. If Risa Shea somehow falls to 4, I expect him to be the pick, and there's also been some interest expressed about Donovan Clingan. However, I don't think Clingan makes much sense next to Wembanyama. You could also see Reed Sheppard go here if he doesn't go 3 to Houston. At number 5, the Detroit Pistons are a bit of a wild card in this draft. Rival teams are viewing Matas Buzelis as the likely pick here, but there's also been some buzz around Cody Williams, Rob Dillingham, and if Reed Sheppard falls to 5, I think he makes a lot of sense as a fit. The Charlotte Hornets have the 6th pick, and I think this is the floor for Stephon Castle. Otherwise, it feels like Dalton Knecht could be in play, or if the Hornets don't believe in Mark Williams long-term, or don't believe in his health, he's been injury-prone, then maybe you could see a Donovan Clingan pick here. I also think there's a chance that the Hornets trade down from this pick, potentially to number 9 if the Grizzlies are trying to hop the Blazers in order to get Donovan Clingan. At number 7, the Portland Trailblazers are looked at as the floor for Donovan Clingan. The Blazers have also been rumored to be trying to trade up for Clingan, but if the Blazers don't end up with him, the 2 most likely picks for them are Dalton Knecht and Tidjane Salaün. At number 8, I really like Rob Dillingham for the San Antonio Spurs to be that point guard of the future. I think Dillingham could play next to Castle if they take him at 4, but the Spurs could go in a bunch of different directions here. Dalton Knecht, Cody Williams, Tidjane Salaün, or even Nikola Topic make some sense at 8. At number 9, the Memphis Grizzlies really want Donovan Clingan, but this draft pick is a little bit too low for him, so they could trade up from it. Otherwise, they could go for some scoring punch off their bench. This feels like the floor for Dalton Knecht. I think he'd be a really good fit there. And you could see prospects such as Devin Carter, Cody Williams, maybe even Jared McCain come into play here. At number 10, the Jazz are interesting. There's really not much buzz around them whatsoever. I do think they keep this pick and they draft somebody. If Nikola Topic is on the board, then he could be the pick. Otherwise, I think they go for a wing in Ron Holland or Cody Williams. At 11, the Chicago Bulls, coming off their awful Caruso trade, have a lot of team building and direction questions, so they could go with a bunch of different prospects here that could make some sense. So if a lot of guys that I've already mentioned are on the board, that could be the pick here at 11 for Chicago. But also keep an eye on Terrence Shannon Jr. He played at Illinois, so they'd be keeping him in state, and I think he has upside. He could be somebody that sneaks into the lottery. At number 12, the Oklahoma City Thunder are likely to go for a boomer bust prospect or somebody that is very safe and can help them win next year. The boomer bust guy is obviously Tidjane Salaün, but if they go the safe route, this is where you start to hear buzz around Deron Holmes and Tristan da Silva. The Sacramento Kings at 13 need some wing help and they need defensive help. I think Ron Holland makes a lot of sense for them here. They just re-signed Malik Monk, so their need for a shooting guard is not as crucial. I also think this is the highest that Jacoby Walter could get picked. At 14, you have the Portland Trailblazers, and apparently they really want Zach Edey with this pick. And something that I forgot to mention earlier is there's a chance that Zach Edey does not fall to 14. Memphis, if they stay at 9, could be the landing spot for Edey. That feels a little bit high and a little bit rich. But if the Blazers don't take Edey, or if he's not on the board, then they could take somebody like Yves Missy, maybe Keyshawn George. This is where the draft gets a little wild, as you're out of the top couple of tiers, and this is where a bunch of different prospects come into play. With the Miami Heat at 15, if either Jared McCain or Devin Carter are on the board, I expect one of those guys to be the pick. At 16, the Philadelphia 76ers are chasing cap space this offseason, so I see them wanting to bring in a player that can play right away on a cheap roster spot off the bench. This feels like the floor for Jared McCain. He seems like a good fit next to Tyrese Maxey, but also this is where you start to talk about Jalen Tyson, maybe Johnny Furphy, and potentially Isaiah Collier as well. At 17, the Los Angeles Lakers will likely be keeping this pick. I don't think it's going to be Bronny. I think it's going to be someone that can come in and play right away for them. Tristan da Silva is the name that I like here. Yves Missy, Terrence Shannon, maybe Bub Carrington as well. At 18, the Orlando Magic need some shooting. Keyshawn George makes some sense, but feels similar to Jet Howard. They need guard shot making, so this is actually a pretty good spot for Bub Carrington. At 19, the Toronto Raptors could go in multiple directions. Masai Ujiri usually has had a tendency to swing for upside. This feels like a pretty good spot for Keyshawn George. At 20, the Cleveland Cavaliers have some questions this offseason. They're trying to sign Donovan Mitchell to a long-term extension, but it's been reported that Darius Garland will request a trade if that happens, so the Cavaliers could be in the market for a point guard. But if they keep their roster intact, they have a bit of a hole at the small forward position. I think this is the floor for Tristan da Silva, and I think other small forwards could come into play, such as Jalen Tyson, maybe Ryan Dunn. This feels a little bit high for him, though. Keyshawn George, Johnny Furphy are some other names. At 21, the Pelicans are likely to draft a point guard or a center as they have a bunch of wings. At 22, the Phoenix Suns, if they select somebody with this pick, are likely to take someone that helps them right away. There's also been rumors that they're looking to trade down from this pick, potentially to Utah at 29 and 32, so they can get 2 cheap role players that could come in and play right away, because the Phoenix Suns do not have enough depth and they are strapped for cash. But if they select here, some of the names that have been tied to them are Ryan Dunn, Yves Missy, Tyler Kolek to come in and give them a point guard, as well as Kyle Filipowski. At 23, the Milwaukee Bucks are also likely looking for someone to help them right away. They did not have good bench play last year, so if they're able to bring in somebody that can help them right away, that makes sense. The New York Knicks have the 24th and 25th picks, and they have a lot of depth on their roster, so I feel like they can go for maybe the best player available at 24 and the highest upside guy at 25. Some of the upside swings that might make sense here are Ulrich Chomchi, AJ Johnson, Isaiah Collier if he's still on the board. But if the Knicks need anything, it's a center with questions about Isaiah Hartenstein returning in free agency and Mitchell Robinson's injury issues. So Yves Missy, Khalil Ware, any center that's on the board here that is a first-round prospect is likely to get picked by the Knicks. At 26, the Washington Wizards, with their second first-round pick, are probably going to go for either a point guard or a center, depending on who they draft at 2. Assuming they get Sarah Klingon, this feels like the floor for Bub Carrington. You could see them go after Tyler Kolek. At 27, the Timberwolves need a point guard for the future. Mike Conley's getting up there in age, so maybe Tyler Kolek makes sense as a pick. Otherwise, they have a lot of depth at other positions. At 28, the Denver Nuggets have been rumored to have given De'Ron Holmes a promise. I think there's a chance that De'Ron Holmes goes higher than this, but should he fall to 28, I would be surprised if that is not the pick for the Denver Nuggets. He makes sense next to Jokic. He makes sense behind Jokic. I like Holmes' fit in Denver. The Utah Jazz have the 29th and 32nd picks. They're trying to trade up in order to consolidate those assets, so it is a bit unlikely that they stay here at 29. And it's impossible to predict who they might draft. And then at 30, you have the Boston Celtics, and I just expect them to make a high-value pick here. They can go for somebody who's a little bit more raw with a little bit more upside, maybe a Pacome Dadier, or they could go with someone who they hope can replace Al Horford's role long-term as he's getting up there in age. So if Kyle Filipowski falls here, that could be a pick. But I do expect to be looking back on this pick after draft night and thinking the Boston Celtics got themselves a player that is going to help them long-term. Anyway, that is my draft preview. Let me know what you think of the draft down in the comment section below. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. A lot of work went into it, so please hit that like button on the way out and also subscribe. We will have a draft stream tomorrow going live at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 4 p.m. Pacific Time. The draft officially starts 1 hour after that, and we will have coverage of every single pick for you right here on this channel. So hopefully you can join us tomorrow. And with that being said, that's a wrap. I'm out of here. I'll catch you next time. Until then, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.